As the original streetwear brand, what do you guys think of Supreme? Which I think is probably the strongest streetwear brand today. Would you agree?
It depends on how you look at streetwear brands and what you expect from a streetwear brand, and if you have a high-end point of view, or if you have that, Supreme 100s point of view. I think their marketing and the way they, release their product, limited edition, I think that's great.
I think they're smart.
Yes.
In terms of how they operate and how they actually control their own destiny with their limited distribution and all those things. So I think they've been smart about and calculating about how they actually do that.
Number one, when they release a product, it's a limited edition product, and it doesn't matter how many they sell or how big the demand is for that particular product, they won't re-release it. You know what I'm saying?
That's great.
It is what it, if you got it, great. If you ain't got it, you'll never see it again.
Right.
They're not going to retro it
right.
a year or 2 years later. It's done. And how I'm sure they've had lots of chances to get their product into lots of other stores, but they would only sell in their own retail stores and online.
Which is great. That's great that they're able to do that and run a business that way. And apparently it's working.
Yeah. What do you think about Kanye and his effect on fashion?
I think he's the fashion god right now.
The fashion god?
Yeah, he's the fashion god right now. He's just the right place, the right time. And it's just, fashion is fashion. He's the guy today. And we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Have you guys ever met him?
That's
is there a Kanye story?
That's a question for TJ.
TJ?
Yeah, I met him. I met him, but I met him through because I teach. I teach at FITM and I teach at Trade Tech.
Okay.
And so at Trade Tech College, he came to be a guest speaker there and actually to sit in some classes. And that's how I actually kind of ran into him there.
Okay.
And then from there, I've seen him a few times.
Okay. Did you guys have any conversations about fashion while he
Yeah,
was there?
we've had conversations about fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah, about fashion.
What was your take on Kanye and his approach to fashion?
I think his approach to fashion is great in terms of his concepts and ideas and direction as far as his fashion is concerned and what he wants to do with the fashion. I think that's a great thing. But the fashion industry has been operating a certain way for so long that it's really hard to kind of change something overnight. So I think his goals and ambitions in terms of actually doing that, I applaud, but just like a lot of other things, it takes time.
Yeah. Well, originally Kanye had tried to start his own fashion company and invested millions of dollars into it and ended up losing it all.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know about this whole?
Sure.
Yeah.
It was in Europe.
Okay. Yeah. Can you explain it? Because I heard him mention it a few times, but I never quite understood it.
I mean, all I know is what I read, and that maybe TJ knows more about it.
I don't know that much about it, but I think it's just, in a nutshell, I think he just, he wanted to actually launch his brand, but I think he wanted to launch it similar to how you do in Europe in terms of where you say you're a couture house or you have your own house in terms of having your brand. And I think he might have aligned himself with someone that had a house or designers from a house in order to actually try to get that done. But it's more than just that to actually launch a brand and to launch it, especially on that level, on that caliber, because there aren't that many people in the house that have a couture, or you can call it couture, if you read up on the history of what couture really means, in terms of that, because you have to be quantified and qualified and all that.
But what does couture mean?
Couture, there's like, a couture means made by hand, basically.
Okay.
It means all the components basically on the actual garment are basically assembled and made by hand. For the most part.
Which is why it has the high price tag.
Yeah, so that's why it has a higher price tag. So that's what it basically means.
So he tried to create his own handmade fashion line.
Yeah, and I don't know if you could consider it handmade, but couture and then on that level.
Okay. And for whatever reason, it ended
It
up
didn't
not.
work. It didn't work because you have to have the right relationships and the right alignment with the right people in order for those things to move properly. And I think maybe that was not lined up properly.
Well, I mean, I remember on some of his songs, I think it might have been like New Slaves, like he really kind of would lash out and just say how angry he was for fashion not letting him in at the time.
Right.
Do you know what I'm talking about? There's an
Sure.
actual line that Kanye said, doing clothes, you would have thought I had help, but they wasn't satisfied unless I picked the cotton myself.
I've never heard that one.
That's from New Slaves by Kanye West off 2 albums ago.
They weren't satisfied unless I picked the cotton myself.
When you guys hear that, what do you take from that?
I don't know. I mean, I take a lot from that. I'm from Mississippi originally. So the part about unless I pick the cotton myself. Well, to me, that means like I would just want to be in control of my total destiny, and I would just want to be able to grow the cotton, make it into fabric, and make the clothes, and actually have control over the distribution and everything. That's what I say from that. I take a positive spin on it myself.
I mean, do you feel that there is a racist element in fashion?
No, just a racist element. I think that the fashion industry, like I just mentioned before, has been controlled and dominated by predominantly other cultures, the races. So I don't know if it's necessarily it could be, but I don't take it that way. I take it that we need to actually, in all honesty, just start to do and be and do and be as a people, and take ownership and get things moving. I mean, we've done it. I mean, we've had our company in the 80s and in the 90s, and we actually did it. I'm from Mississippi, Carl's from South Central, and we were two black men, and we actually came together and did something together. With all the forces against us, we did it. So it can be done.
Sure.
It has been done, and we're doing it again.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think about what Kanye's doing with Adidas? Because it seems like, he tried to start his own line, didn't quite work out. But with Adidas, things are popping right now. When you look at his deal over there, and they actually just re-upped his deal,
Right.
and now he's actually getting his own stores,
Right.
getting a bigger design team, and so forth. What's your take on that?
I think it's great. I think it's great
agree.
in terms of having support. That means that he's getting support to do something. So he's getting a force behind him to help him move something. So I think that's great.
And maybe avoid when you have a company like Adidas that you're partnered with, they'll help you avoid a lot of the pitfalls
Right.
and mistakes, and they have the infrastructure. And, it's a little, you can be a little more creative and worry about that side of the business versus, how are you going to finance this or how are you going to make that? They have that infrastructure and that setup, so you can dial right into it. So that's, should allow you a lot of room to be successful and on point. You have no excuse not to be successful
Right.
with an organization like Adidas behind you.
Well, because Kanye, before Adidas, Kanye was with Nike.
Right.
And then before Nike, I believe he had done some stuff with Louis Vuitton.
Okay.
He had a couple shoes with,
Right.
with
Sure.
both brands. But with Adidas, things to have, seems to have clicked.
Yeah. Well, some things work, some things don't work
Yeah.
in fashion. I mean, it's got to be the right time, the right product, the right people.
It's
like
got to
an
be right.
orchestra. Everything has to be on time, and when it's just somehow it's a formula, and you either have it or you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think what he's done is impressive. Because I
Oh,
remember
absolutely.
talking to people about when he was leaving Nike and going to Adidas. Most people thought that the Adidas shoes weren't really going to pop off for Kanye because Nike is such an iconic brand.
Sure.
To have a Nike is like, a Kanye Yeezy was so desirable because there was only like 1,000 pairs made and so forth.
Sure.
But he went over to Adidas, and what's interesting with Adidas is that His shoes don't have the 3 stripes, which most Adidas have.
Correct.
And yet, they still went through the roof.
Still, it's working.